What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning in. This is a video pertaining to stability and why you need to be paying attention to stabilizing in your exercises, okay? It doesn't matter if your focus is any exercise goal. You need to be as efficient with your time as you possibly can in the gym. Like, you don't have 2-3 hours to waste in the day. It's the modern age. People have a lot of responsibilities to do. People have families to go home to. They have jobs. So the time that you have in the gym needs to be constructive. It needs to be efficient. And one of the main things that you have to realize when you're trying to train with a goal of whatever it may be, specifically or even in addition to muscle growth, is that we're trying to isolate one individual muscle group. That's one individual muscle group. Think about all the different muscles in the body. Your human body was made to be efficient at conserving energy, efficient at dispersing this energy through a multitude of muscles to create one job. Take, for instance, like sitting down to a piece of paper, putting a pencil in your hand, and writing. How many different muscle groups do you guys actually think does that? Probably at least a dozen, if not more. Now we're asking, like, hey, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to train biceps. I'm going to get this muscle only to work. It's really, really inefficient for your body. So what you're doing when you go into the gym is you're actually detraining your body for the way it was born and bred to be, right? So the one major thing that you can do, especially for your weak body parts, I guarantee one of the things you're overlooking is to get better at stabilizing. So what does that take? Well, okay, you have a muscle, and the muscle usually spans between one joint or two joints or whatever. What you're trying to do is to put stability around those joints so that they don't have this extraneous movement going on, so that tissue in between those joints can do all of the work. All of that tension, all of that resistance that's in this hand here and tries to do a bicep curl, okay, is going into this muscle. It's not going some here and some here and some here and some of my external rotators and so on and so forth. So we're trying to stabilize, all right? And what you'll notice is a body part that you're really good at training, you probably are mechanically a little bit more stable in that joint than you are somewhere else. And that has to do with all kinds of structural things, whether you're limited in the range of motion or you have long bones and it puts you at a little bit of a disadvantage. But I don't want to digress into a different topic. The main thing is like considering how can I offer stability. So I'm going to give you guys a couple scenarios, okay? Number one, knowing what muscle groups stabilize a certain bone or joint can be super important. So I'm going to stick to the bicep example. If I'm going to do a bicep curl, I know that my bicep, it has a flexion and extension to it. Like, this is kind of its primary function. It does this. If I want to stabilize this movement at this joint, okay, or if I want to have action at this movement, this joint, excuse me, if I want this joint doing the movement, then I need to make sure that this joint is stable and secure. So imagine if you're like walking, all right, and you're walking on concrete, pretty stable, you can get a lot of output on that. Now imagine if you're walking on a surface that is ice, like no friction, very unstable, you can't fire off, you couldn't sprint on that, you couldn't stop on a dime. It's the same thing with muscles. If I'm trying to get action to this joint, but this one's moving at the same time, do you think this muscle is going to get a lot of output? No, it's not. So we need to identify what are some ways for me to stabilize this. Number one, like I said, is to think about the actual muscles that can stabilize this joint. So I have all kinds of muscles that cross over this shoulder joint, okay, and offer stability. All I have to really do is like recognize which one is probably the best. In this case, I have this bone in the back, this scapula, right? Okay, and there are some muscles that attach to that scapula and cross over the shoulder joint, or there's some muscles that are in the middle of that scapula and attach to the scapula. Okay, so the big thing is like offering security and stabilization to the scapula, and if I offer that, then I probably will stabilize this joint or at least do a better job of it so that I can be inefficient at making this muscle do all the work, right? Realize we're doing inefficiency here, not efficiency, because if we were doing efficiency, I would be okay with both joints moving at the same time to create this movement. We're trying to create a maximal contraction in this, okay? So stabilizing literally could be taking the trap 2, doing a little bit of retraction, taking the trap 3, doing a little bit of depression, and there you go. Now I have a joint that is stable, and I can get, so you guys can see here, all kinds of elbow flexion and extension without this rotation happening here at this joint in or out or externally or whatever it may be, right? So that's one thing. Know what muscles can stabilize bones or joints so that one muscle can do most of the work. The second thing is if I'm not really coordinated, I don't know how to stabilize this, I could actually use something artificial to offer an artificial stabilization. So in that case, like a bench, right? If I have a bench that maybe I lean into and push into, now I've offered stability. If I have a preacher bench, right, that I'm able to drive my tricep into, now I have stability, okay? If I just set on a bench and I retract into it here, now I have some form of stability. If I lean against a wall, now I have some kind of stability. So what you're doing is you're kind of using something artificial if you're uncoordinated at learning how to stabilize, or if your stabilizers are so weak, eventually they're going to fatigue, right? Because stabilizers are working the whole time while the primary mover is working. They're doing like this, essentially this isometric, ish contraction while you're going through your set and the prime mover is working. If they're weak, they could get fatigued. So the secondary thing you can do is use something artificial so the stabilizers don't have to work quite as hard, okay? The last thing that I would recommend to you is, first you're going to have to know a little bit about your human anatomy, but is to strengthen these stabilizers, okay? So you have to think of the joints that have like the most freedom and movement to them. And in my opinion, with training, that is your shoulder joint, like your scapula and your GI, okay? And your hips, right? All the muscles that cross over your pelvis and actually attach to it and can stabilize or be a prime mover. It's getting better at actually doing activations, okay, that get these stabilizers awake. So if you guys have watched any of my material in the past, if you guys follow any of my social media, you'll notice that I go through these activations pre-training. The activation actually isn't to get the primary movers ready, it's actually to get the stabilizers like awake and a little bit pissed off so that I'm aware of when they are actually stabilizing and when they're not stabilizing, because there's two major things that I see beneficial in stabilization. If I have a weak body part, I have to stabilize even harder, okay? And as I fatigue, I need my stabilizers even more to get that last little bit of effort out of that primary mover, okay? So anytime I'm doing any kind of quad hamstring training, anytime I'm doing any chest, lat, shoulder training, I'm always doing activations relative to something on the inside to get that inside working properly so that all this extraneous movement on the outside is actually more efficient, okay? Now, there's all kinds of stuff we can dive into as to like why stabilizing is super important. There's all different ways of stabilizing, okay? But realize every single exercise that you do is a total body movement from toe to head. So you need to go in that order. When I used to practice my posing all the time, when I used to help posing clients, that's the way you would teach them, is like you think through your feet, you work yourself up, and then boom, you hit your pose, right? You go through that checklist. Training is no different. All that translates to training. I don't care if you have a bench or something is open chain or closed chain or free weight or machine, like everything has got to be stable. That's not supposed to be moving, and the only thing that should be moving is the actual joint that muscle that's working acts on. And realize that, okay? So there's two major things that can really help you guys going forward. I'm gonna preach this and preach this and preach this. You don't have to be a geek about it, but the first thing is making sure that you know a little bit of human anatomy, okay? And the second thing is taking proper notice to take the first 10 minutes of your training or do an extra 10 minutes prior to training of getting your activations on your stabilizing muscle groups so that you get more out of your primary movers, okay? It's not overthinking, it's just efficiency, because once I go into these actual working sets, I want those working muscles working. I don't want to spend all these extra sets like figuring and finding, like, and going, okay, that one felt a little pretty good. Let's try this. Let's try it. Like, I want to go in and say, okay, I'm going to put the hammer down and it's time to go. These are 4 real working sets because I did my due diligence at warming up and learning how to brace and stabilize first, okay? So I hope this video was helpful, guys. If it's helpful, all right, please make a comment. If you guys have questions, please comment. If you think somebody else is going to benefit from this, by all means, go ahead and share it. Let's spread the wealth of great knowledge and efficiency in training. I'll talk to you soon.